My name is Patricia Palafox Sweisford. I'm a native El Pasoan. I was born and raised in El Paso. I've traveled, but I always come back home. And why do I like food? I like the sensation of chewing. I like the smelling of food. I like the texture of food. So for me, going out to eat, which I love to do, it has to be good food. I went to culinary school at El Paso Community College after I retired from teaching. I delayed the retirement from teaching because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I went to a fundraiser for KCOS at the community college, and they took us on a tour of their culinary school. And as I finished that tour, I went home and I told my husband, I'm going to retire because I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to culinary school. So fortunately, I had a very understanding principal. She didn't want me to quit or retire. She said, you're going to have to tell the staff, I'm not going to. So what I did was we had an in-service meeting and I bought all my culinary clothes, my pants, my chef coat, my hat. And at the meeting, I went in dressed like that and told them what I was going to do. I was able to, it was a 3-year program, an associate's degree. Of course, I already had an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, so they were able to use some of my undergraduate courses for the courses at community college. So most of my time was spent in the culinary program. I planned on getting a degree in culinary arts, baking, and restaurant management. So the first semester, we had to take classes in all of those areas. And the baking class, I love baking, but I am not a baker. Because for the culinary program, everything had to be perfect. You had to think in terms of this has to be saleable. And the professor would tell me, Patricia, you got to do this again. I would be piping and piping and piping, and he'd say, this is ugly. Pick it up and do it again. So at the end of that semester, I decided baking was not for me. Then, after I finished the courses at community college, well, one interesting thing is one of the teachers, one of the chefs at community college, was a student I taught in elementary school. So when he walked into the classroom, his eyes got big and my eyes got big, and all he could say was, Mrs. Sweisford. And it took him all semester before he could call me Patricia. So then, after I finished the coursework, I learned the restaurant business was not for me. We had several classes that we had to work in the kitchen at the community college, and it was too physically draining for me. I mean, I was already in my 60s, and I just couldn't stand the heat in the kitchen. So there was no way for me to decide that I'm going to go to work again. But I did end up in a kitchen with my friend, Roman Wilcox, who was the chef at the Mustard Seed. So Roman and I worked for several years at the Mustard Seed, and now he has opened his other business called One Grub Community. But he doesn't need my help anymore because I was a volunteer and now he has paid employees. But I continue the relationship with him. I follow him wherever he goes and love his food.
Can you tell us more about that food that he
About
does?
what?
What kind of food does he do?
That chef, Roman has become a plant-based chef. Everything he makes now is based on plants. He's no longer, well, he does eat meat, but he no longer serves meat. And so part of his experience is the food he makes, everything has to have wonderful taste, wonderful texture, and be healthy for you. And it is. So my husband is not much of a planty person, but I always bring food home excuse me. And he always says, this is good. So I have to message Roman and let him know, Raymond likes your food, Roman.
Nice. Thank you for that introduction in terms of your interest in food. Let me take you back a little bit, if we may, and tell us more about growing up in El Paso and sort of early memories of food.
That's real. Growing up in El Paso and memories are real difficult for me, and I don't know why. I know people can talk about their childhood and say they remember this or they remember that. What I remember, though, is because we had such a large family, if my mother bought one chicken, it had to feed 10 people. Or if she bought a round steak, it had to feed 10 people. So whatever we had was, meat-wise, protein-wise, was limited in quantity. And of course, at that time, canned food and frozen food was a big deal. And that kind of turned me off to food. Mm-hmm. But my mother did try very hard. And Sunday was always a roast with potatoes and carrots. But my dad liked his meat well done. And to this day, I do not like well done food. My mother would cut recipes out and try them. And I would cut recipes out and try them. I remember she always had some kind of dessert, which was probably pudding or jello or I can't think of the name of it. The food, the dessert in a can that's all mixed fruit. You know.
Fruit cocktail.
So that's my early memory of eating. Is the food was limited, and it had to serve a lot of people.
What year are we talking about? What decade?
Well, we would be talking the 50s and the 60s. And of course, TV dinners came out. That was a big deal. Not too good. And if my parents went out to eat, the kids didn't get to go because there were too many of us. They couldn't afford it. So my memory of going out to eat was they would find a place that they could buy 10 hamburgers for a couple of dollars. So we never went out to eat.
Okay. So where does your interest for food then comes in? Because you're very interested in food. Where did you begin to develop that?
I'm not sure when I developed my interest for food. I remember cooking because my mother didn't like to cook, and she wasn't a very good cook. So I kind of developed my skills that way. Oh, but I do remember, oh yes, for Christmas I got a little oven. That was wonderful. And I could make, it came with the baking pans and little packages of cake mix and things like that. And you just plug it into the wall and you could make your own cakes. That was it. I loved my little oven. And I've never seen one like that again.
What was this?
Uh-huh.
What year was that, more or less?
Oh, gosh. I'd say somewhere between 7 and 10. Yeah, that's... Could I remember the smell of the oven because it was electric.
Okay.
But yeah, we made little bitty cakes and little bitty cupcakes, and that's my cooking experience from a young age.
Okay. As you got older, well, first of all, tell us what area of El Paso you grew up.
We lived in central El Paso, which is close to Loretto and Radford. I went to Colwell Elementary School. I went to Austin High School, and I still live in the same area now. Mm-hmm. It's called Austin Terrace now, and we're an historic district. Mm-hmm. I know I took home economics in high school, but I don't remember learning a whole lot because I think I already learned at home. Not that my mother taught me, but I cooked at home, so cooking wasn't a big deal. I'm sure we had a cookbook, but I don't recall what it was. I took a home economics class for sewing, but I already knew how to sew. My mom taught us how to sew on an old treadle sewing machine, and we were making our own clothes at that time. So I don't remember much about food at that point in time. I did leave home at 19 and worked part-time and went to college part-time, and I got married at 4 days shy of 21, and money was real tight. My husband was on the GI Bill and I was working only part-time, so we had rent and food, and fortunately tuition for him was paid for. And so I had to start budgeting money for food, and realizing I was doing the same thing my mom was doing. If I got a chicken, it was going to have to last all week. If I bought hamburger, it was going to have to last all week. And my sister moved in with us, and she got into cooking too, so I guess we developed a lot of cooking interests then. And later on, she became a macrobiotic cook. Macrobiotic was, I guess you would say, it's plant-based now. And she went to cook for cancer patients too. So, food was real important to us, but money was tight. And so we had to do the best we could at that time. Of course, now money is no object, and I can buy whatever I want and cook whatever I want and eat wherever I want. I have been, I went to Italy for a month-long cooking school, and I went because my sister-in-law found this tour, and they were either doing photography, cooking, or painting. And she knew I liked to cook, and she needed someone to go with her, so I did the cooking part. And we lived in Tuscany at a villa in the wine country. Of course, Tuscany's famous for wine. And every day we had breakfast and dinner that was prepared by wonderful chefs. And, excuse me, and we toured the country. We did wine tasting, of course. We did olive oil tasting. We went to the big market in Florence. And we would just have wonderful food every day. Then, anytime I've traveled around the world, food has been something I have to do. So if they have cooking classes and it's only half a day, I'll do that. I did go on a tour in New England, and we spent the day in a little New England village, going from place to place to place, tasting food. I've gone on several cruises and experienced food there, and that's where I learned about food pairing with wine. That was a wonderful experience. I never realized that food would taste differently, or wine would taste differently, the way the food was prepared. So that has made me interested in that aspect of food. One day I was going to have a dinner party at my house, and so I invited my sister over several days earlier, and we sat outside with different food I was going to prepare, tasting it with the wine. So I did have one professor at community college who later on went to cook at a local restaurant, and he said, "You need to come down and eat." And I said, "I'm only going to eat if the food is really good." And he said, "I promise you, Patricia, it will be good." And it was, and it's one of my favorite places to eat now.
Which is?
Tabla. I love the tapas at Tabla. That chef has moved on to other places, but I have found that the food scene in El Paso has changed considerably. It's taken a long time, but a lot of the people that are running the restaurants now have gone through the cooking experience in the local high schools. And they have been the teachers at the high schools. So one of my professors at community college was working in the culinary program at Montwood, and he now owns his own restaurants, Zeno's. Okay? And so anytime I go to Zeno's, he comes out and we say hi, and he asks me how I'm doing. Again, there's Roman. He's got his restaurant. And a lot of the people that he knows are the same chefs that he went to school with and have opened up places here in town. So El Paso is starting. It's taking a long time, but we're on our way. We really are.
When you think of it in our way, from where to where? So describe how do you see this change?
Okay, well, for me personally, because I live in Central, I don't like to travel too far for food. And the East Side, I know there's good places there, but it's just too far. The traffic is too bad. So when I do go out, I usually go to some of the same places. Of course, Mexican food, I go to Kiki's. Like their red cheese enchiladas. If I go to Tabla, then I'm going to have several of their tapas. And I usually pick certain ones that I always get because I know they're always good. And then I decide, okay, I'm going to try something else. I don't eat fast food. And I guess maybe, I don't know why, but we never were fast food fans, I guess. But I don't do fast food. If I cook, it's all from scratch. And that includes baking. I still bake, but it's all from scratch. I don't buy cake mixes or anything like that. I like the fresh vegetables. I go to the farmer's market. Unfortunately, El Paso isn't that big in the farmer's market and vegetables. They're getting there, but they're not. But I do like organic food. When I cooked for my brother when he had cancer, everything was organic. And he lived in Cloudcroft, and they had farmers markets there. And I found one man who lived there, and I could go visit him during the summer, and he would have fresh, organic food. And I really think it makes a difference in the taste of the food and what you're putting into your body. But I still like meat. I can't give that up.
Okay. If you want to take us back, I'm interested in your travels, and you mentioned Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us some of the food, what some of the techniques or new dishes that you discover in Italy or in other places in the world where you've gone and taken cooking classes, and how that have changed how you cook at home? Have you seen the connection between those?
Yes. Okay. My family and I had a family reunion in France, and we had met the person who made the connection between France and El Paso and the U.S. Through a genealogy program. And for some reason, my brother started corresponding with this guy, and turned out our father was the missing link in a group of brothers. So the family came from Belvidere, France, which is in the Alsace region of France. And one year, or every year, the little town celebrates some of the families. And one year they celebrated our family, the Palafox. Well, not Palafox, the Bowman family. And so our cousin got a hold of us, and 5 of us, of my siblings, we went to France and met relatives we'd never met before and learned about our family. Well, in this little village, they decided to treat us to the local foods. And so they'd have these big spreads of local food, which really wasn't very good. But that was kind of an introduction to our background of what our family was like and the food. And then we had a really interesting experience. We went to a place in the mountains, close to the Alps, and people were having pizza. Well, you know, in El Paso, you can have pizza, and if you can't eat it all, you can take it home. Well, over there, each one of us had to order a whole pizza, not buy a pizza and share it. So we had to have pizza, and we were leaving the next day. They did let us take it with us, but that was a weird experience that later on when I went to Madrid, the first time we sat down to have pizza, we had to ask them, do we all have to order a pizza? And we didn't have to. So that was an experience. So we traveled through France, and we went on to Spain. Oh, We went to Barcelona and everybody just raved about paella. Well, I don't think paella is that good, but we did have wonderful experiences. And one of the women who ran the B&B that we stayed in France told us about a restaurant in Barcelona that we needed to go to. So we found it, and lots of seafood. So whenever you're by the ocean, you got to eat seafood, especially if you come from El Paso. And the problem was the seafood came with heads and tails. And my sister couldn't deal with that, but I could. So we ate in different restaurants, recommended by people who we had never met before, but they said, try these places, and we did. And we went to Madrid, and then we went to a little town called Zaragoza, which is in the northern part of Spain, and that's where the Palafox family is from. So my dad is Palafox and Bowman, so there's the French and the Spanish version, and then my mom is from Mexico. But we went to the Palafox Hotel, and a 5-star hotel, you know, and we ate in their restaurant, but it wasn't so good. But if you walk around these little towns, there's restaurants everywhere, and you get to sit outside and eat, and that's just a wonderful experience. And so we did have a pizza experience there and had to ask them, could we order just one pizza? And that was okay. And a lot of the food experiences came from the fact that it's inexpensive to eat over there. You can get a meal and you get everything instead of ordering each item separately. So every time we had food, it was good food. Excuse me. Let's see. Then, our last night in Madrid, we decided to go to a fancy restaurant. And boy, was it fancy. Of course, white tablecloths, and we were dressed for it too. And I was so impressed because as we finished each course, they removed all the flatware, all the plates, and gave us everything new. And that was like, wow, this is the way dining should be. And we have something similar in El Paso, not quite, but it's here also, and it's brand new too. It's called Taft Diaz. And they're a wonderful, wonderful eating experience. Let's see. Then a couple of years later, I went to, that was my France and Spain trip. Then my cousin and I went back to Spain, and we went to Mallorca, the island of Mallorca. And we had a wonderful food experience there too. And I believe it was a pasta dish, and I'm not too big on pasta, but this food was just outstanding. And we traveled back to Barcelona, we went to Madrid, we went down to Seville. We went up to San Sebastian, which is one of the food capitals of the world. And I happened to have a friend who was an intern at one of the 3-star Michelin restaurants there. I'd met him in culinary school. And he worked at the Mustard Seed with Roman and I. And he had not finished his degree at culinary school, but he wanted to go to this internship, and he got into it, and it's very difficult to get into. So I was in Spain at the same time he was in Spain. So we made a point of meeting in San Sebastian, where he was doing his internship. And we spent one day together. It was really hard. We got his day off, and we rented a car, and we bought bread and cheese and salami, and we traveled around the coast. And so I did eat at one of the best tapa places in San Sebastian, but didn't know it at the time. And later on read about it, and it's like, what's the difference between tapas and pulpas? Or wait, not pulpas. I can't think of the word. It's like a tapa, but it's a little bit different. And it starts with a P. I can't think of what it is. Pincho.
Pincho.
Pincho, yeah. So I did have that, and that was one of the things I wanted to do was eat at a restaurant in San Sebastian, and I did, and it was really good. But I can't remember what I had.
Yeah. Let's stop for a second.
I graduated late from college, like I was 28, and so I decided to give myself a trip to Europe. And I had a girlfriend whose sister and brother-in-law would take tours of high school students to Europe. And so I went with them, not as a chaperone, but I was able to join the tour. And these were all high school students. And one thing that I learned then, and I was so embarrassed when we traveled around Europe, we went to 5 different countries over a month. These kids would not eat some of the food. It was different. And I was so embarrassed, I ate the food and I gained 10 pounds. So, I thought, and I remember some of the experience was in Germany, and they had this mystery meat, and we didn't know what it was. And of course, the kids wouldn't eat it because they didn't know what it was, but it was beef heart. And I ate everything the pasta, the salads, but I paid for it, and I thought, I have to eat it. It's my food, and it's worth it. So, whatever you pay for, yeah, you've got to eat it. But that was my experience with traveling in the beginning, with people not eating the food. But that's part of why you travel, is to experience other people and other food and learn about them. And when I went to culinary school, we had 2 classes. One was local American cuisine, and then there was international cuisine. So in the American cuisine, every week we would go to a different part of the country, and we would learn about the popular food that that part of the country cooked. But we also learned why and where these people came from before they settled there. And of course, they brought their food experiences with them, but they didn't find the same ingredients. So ingredients had to change or were modified for that particular part of the country. And one thing we made was Hoppin' John salad, and it's black-eyed peas, and it's so good. Hoppin' John salad. But we would always do different, we'd spend the whole week in one part of the country. Then we would also spend in international cuisine another week in another part of the world and learn about the people and their background, and again, the spices involved, the food that was available or wasn't available, and the best food that we cooked, and I thought it would be like French cooking, and it was Chinese. It was wonderful. The flavors were wonderful. But I have no desire to go to China, but I experienced it in that class. So I have, you talk about foods and flavors, and I have a spice rack that just is huge. I may not use all of them in 1 year, but I have lots of spices, and I know that spices can make the difference in a lot of food. And of course, right now that my husband is sick and he's going to have a special diet, I'm going to have to incorporate more spice, not hot spice, but more spices to help improve the food to make him want to eat.
Yeah. This brings me to a question in terms of our experiences. If you can talk a little bit how throughout your life, how food has changed and what has brought those changes a little bit. You talk a little bit about growing up with a lot of resources or limited resources.
Yeah.
So that was a change, and then you
How
got
was-
married. But how has it, philosophically, if you can talk about it, how does your view?
I think food has changed, and my first experience with the changing of food is back in the 70s when my sister started getting away from beef, and she started cooking with more vegetables and plant-based proteins, and that made me more aware of what was going on. But the whole society has changed a lot, and people's headset have changed a lot, and they're finding out that sometimes food that we've liked is doing harm to us and to our bodies. And of course, people being more conscious about weight and what they put into their bodies has made us limit some of the foods that we've eaten. Um, but I just think it's a whole culture change, and it's happened gradually. I saw this beginning in the 70s, and now we're already, 30, 40 years later. I did realize when my brother had cancer, we had to cut sugar out. We cut sugar out completely from his diet, and we also got rid of all gluten. And a lot of people, I still believe in the no sugar, and if I do sugar to sweeten something, it's going to be real sugar. I'm not going to use any of these sugar substitutes, but I had to learn to cook with honey and maple syrup instead of white sugar. Um, Also, the gluten, that's individual. I mean, I still like gluten, but I know some people are very sensitive to it. So, even restaurants have had to change some of their diets, the things they serve, to accommodate people. So it's just a whole lifestyle change. And it's for the good better, I think. It's for the better.
Great. I have one more formal question. What do you think food should mean to all of us?
Oh, wow, that's tricky. What should food mean to us? Besides giving our bodies nutrients, I think food, we need to think about it in terms of how it's grown, where it comes from, what we're putting into the soil, and how we're helping, excuse me, other people um, grow food. Um, we can't just do, Monsanto stuff and spray everything with herbicides and hurt the land. I don't know, we just, sorry. Thank you. Food it brings people together. We all have to eat. So why shouldn't it be enjoyable? Why shouldn't it be good for us? Why can't we help each other develop the food industry?
You mentioned Monsanto. Not everybody will know what Monsanto is. Can you tell us what Monsanto is?
Monsanto is bad. Monsanto is a company that specializes in weed killing for profit. And so they've convinced many farmers that it's necessary to put these herbicides on their plants to grow better plants or bigger plants. And actually, they're doing more damage to the soil and to the plant itself. And I feel so strongly about this because my husband served 2 tours in Vietnam, and he got poisoned with Agent Orange. And he suffers from cancer as a result of Agent Orange. And that is something that we've done to ourselves, and we allowed the government to do to us. And that's why we have to stop Monsanto doing this to the rest of the people. And they're not just in the United States either. They're everywhere. They're all over the world. And we're hurting our people and giving them diseases and illnesses caused by these chemicals.
Yeah. Any other comments, observations that you would like to make and share with the community that would see this video in the future about food, about a puzzle, about?
Well, for the future, we all have to eat, and why shouldn't it be good? And why shouldn't we help each other make good food?
Okay. I am going to ask one more question. I lied. I know that you are doing a special diet right now because of your husband's health issues. But under other circumstances, what are some of the foods that you like to cook at home?
Do I like to cook?
at home? What are some of the things that you would like to cook?
I like. Oh gosh, that's hard. It's hard. Um, I like salmon. I have a smoker outside, and I do a lot of our food that way. It doesn't get the direct flame like you do if you got barbecue something on a grill. I like salmon, and I like to keep it simple, of course, but with some flavor. I like chicken. I like my smoked chicken. I like steaks. Um, I like a good salad, and you have to put lots of stuff in it to make it a good salad, but you need fresh vegetables to do it. And and you can put so many things into a salad. You know, fruits, vegetables, nuts, all kinds of stuff. I like on a salad. If I order one, I usually do not have any dressing on it. I just put salt and pepper. Um, I like eclectic food. Not necessarily. I like Mexican food, but I don't make Mexican food actually. No, that's not true. I did make. My husband wanted caldo de res, and I made him some caldo de res. Okay, and I make a soup that I learned from in Julio's from Juarez, and we make Julio's Especial, and it's a chicken soup, chicken-based soup. Um, I can't say what I like the best. I like fried chicken, but I got sick one time and I don't eat fried chicken anymore, and I really like it. I like cake. I really like cake, and I like cookies. But I don't make them very often, but if I do, I make them from scratch. I like wine. Okay. Oh, and I did tell you about the food pairing experience on the cruises. That was very important to me. And I still do food pairing and wine tasting at local restaurants. I think that's a really good way to experience good food and good wine. I frequent one of my places downtown that I met the owner and the chef when he was like 7 years old. And now he has his own place downtown. And it's just a seafood place. It's called Max downtown. And he makes a salmon with spinach that's just out of this world. So like once a week I go down there and he'll always say, I was thinking about you, that you'd be coming in. So
Great.
that's my idea about food.
Well, Patricia, thank you so much for your time and your stories and your knowledge about food and sharing it with us. Appreciate it.
Glad I could help.